live, and good morning to all. We're live. Thank you very much for joining us today on Behind the Markets. It is the 24th of January, 2023. 24-23. This is the time to
January.
really. I'm sorry,
Did you say January,
January.
Munyumba?
My, I can't believe it.
Are you going back in time?
I'm starting the beginning of the year. You know what? I think it's the second half of the year. So it's the 24th of July, 2023. It is, these months are starting to mix up on me. I'm just going straight one tunnel. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for being my voice, my voice of reason. So thank you to everybody for joining me today. And thank you, Stephanie. And how are you doing this morning?
I'm fine. It's good to know that Munyumba's really started again and afresh. I could actually grab your spirit, Munyumba. It doesn't hurt to
His
start
mercy,
afresh.
His mercies are new every morning, Stephanie. His mercies are new every
Yeah,
morning. So it's a good
definitely.
restart. And it's as
Definitely.
everyone can see, we have a little bit of a change up happening here. We have a little bit of a more beautiful face on the other side of the spectrum here. Stephanie, thank you for balancing out the equation. I think a few
Thank
people are saying,
you.
these two guys all the time. But thank you so much for joining us. Today is Mindset Monday. So on Mondays, we take a step back. I bombard people with numbers, data, statistics, analysis so many times that I like to take a step back on Monday and say, let's reorient our mind. And one of the reasons, by the way, I just always want to recap why we started Mindset Mondays was because after reading the story of how China became what it is today, I understood that one of the first things the first president of China did, regardless of what you may think of Chairman Mao, one of the first things he did was he gave out something called a little red book. Now that thing also it brainwashed a lot of Chinese in certain activities, but he also inculcated into them the spirit of hard work, discipline, thinking more important of themselves. Chinese started to gain their confidence under the control of the Japanese. The Chinese lost their confidence. They used to be slaves. They used to be picked on. They used in fact, they were used for brutal experiments by the Japanese in the Second World War. So when you look at the history of the Chinese, they really had to fight to get their dignity back. And one of the first things that Chairman Mao noticed was, I
Mm,
need to get these people to believe in themselves again. And that's partially what the Little Red Book did. Now, it did some dangerous things as well, but it did also make sure that it gave them their confidence back. And at some points, he used to make everybody read from it to the point where they said simple things like where the police would actually stop you sometimes and ask you to recite a page from the Little Red Book so that you understood it. So
mm,
one of the greatest lessons that taught me was not that you have to hold people at gunpoint, but mindset is extremely important because those seeds allowed the Chinese to now start going into industries, starting to believe in themselves, starting to remember that they were the number one economy at one point in the 1600s. In fact, they were the longest standing empire for the longest period. There's no empire that has stood longer than the Chinese empire. And they understood that they ruled. I think they reigned globally from the year 600 to almost the year 14,000, 15,000. So you can see it was almost a millennium of a reign by the Chinese empire, and they finally got their spirits back. And I think why we start Mindset Mondays again for people is simply because Monday is a time for us to try and get into our minds. And one of the things we need to fix very carefully is the Zambian mindset in approaching the week, approaching work, approaching money, approaching wealth, and approaching the problems in society. So thank you very much for everybody for joining us for Mindset Monday. If you are watching this, please share this with a friend. Tag them in. They might want to hear of this. Tell us where you are, where you're joining us from. Please call in, dial in, share with us what all this means for you today. And Stephanie and I are going to take you through a cruise control as we've been going through, and just maybe to give to hop Stephanie on board, we've been doing the book, The Power to Change by Craig Groeschel, where he's actually been targeting the issues of change and how to manage it. And part of what we've been going through, so we really have been on this part of training and not trying. That you
mm.
shouldn't put effort in the moment, you should put effort building up to the moment. Train yourself for the things you want to achieve. Don't try to achieve things. Train for the things. I ask you this simple question, Stephanie. If you
Mm.
walked in, if you said, okay, I want to one day box Esther Piri, who is the women's champion, would you just pitch up tomorrow and just give it your best?
No, I have to plan and
You-
prepare.
Thank you. Otherwise, you'd be in a concussion. Woman she would knock you into a concussion. That's why. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, because she
unless I'm
trains.
going to make profit, but I need to prepare.
How much profit is worth getting whacked? Even for me as a guy, what profit is
And
worth
knocked
getting
down.
whacked by that woman's fist? Uh, Most men would back down from that fight, let alone women. I'm just telling you, physically, most guys would back down from that fight because the truth
You
of the
need to be
matter
among
is,
the courageous.
yeah, first of all, she's a trained warrior. Okay, I don't
Yeah.
care. You can tell me, woman, what you want. That woman is a trained warrior. She has iron fists. She will knock you out. The point
Mm.
is, you don't engage something challenging without training for it. And in fact, one of the things that most people don't understand is by engaging in training for something, you are right. You are actually assuming the identity of that thing before even getting it. You know, one of the symbols of being a football player is going for football training. One of the symbols of being a rugby player is going for rugby training. One of the symbols for being an accountant is going to school to train as an accountant. So, in order to become something, it's not trying to do it that gets you there, it's training for it that actually makes you become something. Stephanie, I
Mm.
think before you became a radio presenter, you trained for this. Okay, you went through some sort of training. Somebody groomed you. You went to some sort of course or whatever it is, or even at an induction. You went through a process that taught you the ropes, taught you how to do things, and bit by bit, you got better and better at it. From before I became an economist, I trained to do it. So, one of the things we all have to get into is the discipline of training for things, and we need to stop trying to do things. That's why, even in the famous movie Star Wars, Yoda says to Luke Skywalker, when Luke Skywalker says, "Ah, Master Yoda, I will try," he says, "Do or don't. There is no try." Okay. So I think one
Mm.
of the things you want to get out of your vocabulary is the word try. Remove it. It's actually something you have to start doing. So here's a little activity. It's called mental reframing, Stephanie, and
Mm.
train for it. You see, I'm already working on it. Replace every time you want to use the word try, use the word train. Like every single time you catch yourself using the word try, okay, train. Like literally replace it. Because training symbolizes you are in a process where you are getting better gradually to the point of what you aspire. Trying means you're going to give effort, but if it doesn't work, it's fine. You know, that's that's the kind of thing. So what Craig Rochelle did in that book, and this is in the second section of the book, it's called trying as a training and not trying. He says, imagine yourself going for a run, Stephanie. And let's put this,
Mm.
let's paint this picture. Imagine you're going for a run. Okay, you wake up in the morning, you wake up and say, I'm going to run 10, I'm going to run from Money FM to 10 miles. That's the I'm going to do a
Don't
marathon.
ever do that. Yeah.
There's a marathon where you're going to run to Chilanga from
Mm.
Manila to Chilanga. Either way, it's still far. And there's a
Mm.
marathon happening. And you decide, Stephanie, I'm not going to train for it. I'm going to just pitch up on the day. I haven't run in so long. I'm just going to pitch up on the day and I'm just going to try and run. I'm just going to just give it my best. How far do you think you'll get before you start hoofing out blood or whatever dinner you had yesterday?
Mm.
How far do you think you're gonna get in that race?
Not as far, I think just up to the corner from where Money FM is.
Zero training.
That's what he does. Go to the gym today and come back and thank me later if you've not been training for a long time.
Exactly. So you need to train for things. So if the best you can run is 1 kilometer or even 500 meters, start with 500 meters and say, okay, now I'm going to increase to a kilometer. And every week until the marathon comes, I'm going to run an extra 500 meters or a kilometer. That is training. Okay. That is what we call training. So there's people go through sales training to become salespeople. People go through all sorts of training to become good at certain skills or to become that thing. So training gives you a strong footing on becoming the identity. If you are not training to run, how can you call yourself a runner? If you are not training in fitness, how can you call yourself fit? Now he talks about training in godliness as well, which is a very strong part of it. Because he talks about the fact that we have to tap into God's power, not willpower. That's another part of this conversation, which we'll have down it. But the point of Mindset Monday is to assume the mindset of a person who's training. Now, one of the main things we have been talking about, Stephanie, about a training mindset is that training is disciplined. If you are training for something, you have to do it consistently. You can't say, I'm training for a marathon. You run today, 30 days, you don't run. Then another day, that's when you run. Then 40 days again, you don't run. Are you training? Is that training?
No.
Training is something you do methodically and consistently. And you usually do it under coaching or guidance. So always remember when you're training for something, you're often being guided by someone. You are doing it consistently. There's a method, there's metrics that you're tracking. Okay, there is a full thing. And even when you're training, Stephanie, if somebody says, I'm training for a marathon and they don't buy sneakers, they don't buy the sneakers or the running shoes for the marathon, are they training?
Good point, though.
Yeah. So when you're training for something, you usually invest in gear, right? Or the apparatus or the tools. So you have to always consider, you have to ask yourself, what investment have you made in achieving this goal whenever you're training? So that's why I'm saying I've put this. I always advise people that book is phenomenal. I think it's finally in Zambia, The Power to Change by Pastor Craig Rochelle, and he goes through this process. So the first section he says is who before do. Your identity is extremely important. If you don't identify with something, if it doesn't become your identity, there's always resistance in doing it. So if something is not your identity, like you don't believe that's what you are or who you are, if you don't believe that's who you are, you will always have to force yourself. So one of the things he says is trying is hoping to become something you are not. Training is becoming better at something you already are. Okay? So you are a boxer, you train to become a better boxer. You try in hopes of becoming a boxer, but you train to become a better boxer. You try in hopes of becoming an accountant, but you train to become a better accountant. You try in hopes of becoming an entrepreneur, but you train to become an entrepreneur. So you have to understand that these things training is a different kind of way of approaching something. It's accepting your current starting point as a starting point and knowing that there's a process that's going to take you from point A to point B, not an effort. It's not an effort that will take you from point A to point B. It is a process. And if you're watching this right now, I'd like you to write in the comments section that training acknowledges that it's a process that gets me to my destination, not my efforts. Okay? And the effort is just getting into the training, but it's allowing the process. In fact, one of the things he actually says from a more Christian perspective is he says training is how you allow God to better you, because then you're trusting the process that he has put in place, and God works through processes. So if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, you're allowing the hand to work you through a process. And I say this even for people who are saving and investing. Okay, train yourself for wealth building. Don't try to build wealth, train to build wealth. And what does training mean? Go through the processes, go through an enlightenment, get coached, get advised. There's so many things I always say: get advised, get on a plan, get started. Those are the three gets you want. Those are the three things you want to get. So you want to get educated, get a plan, and get started. Those are the three things you want to get. And you want to go through that planning process. And that means that you may not be good at budgeting, But training for budgeting, you can say, if I tell you, are you running a budget? You say, okay, I'll try. No, you train to run a budget. Okay.
I'll try and
So
follow the budget. Yeah.
you don't try to follow the budget, Stephanie. You train to follow the budget. You see how common that use of the word try has become in our vocabulary. It's like a way
Everything.
of escaping. Yeah. Even the way we greet each other. I'm trying. I'm trying. No, 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 no. You're training. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And it was actually a very important change for me when I read the book this year. By the way, it's a brand new book. It came out
Mm.
this year. And I started to address certain things in my life, be it even trying to look at my physical journey, be it trying to look at my work journey. I'm looking at my work sessions, how I plan my work sessions, because I'm training to increase my productivity. I'm not trying to increase my productivity. I do things like I block out my phone for a long period of time. I do things like I disable any social media connections because I am training to become more productive. I'm not trying to become more productive. And that's the difference. So even when you're training, Stephanie, if you're training to go boxing, you go to a gym where you can get better at boxing. Whatever it is, if you're training for playing rugby, you go to a rugby field. So you also put yourself in an arena where that training will take place. So environmental engineering is also important. If you're training for running, Stephanie, can you train in your living room?
No.
You can't. If you see your friend sitting in front of the TV in their living room, and they're wearing all the running gear, but they're sitting in their living room and they're saying, "No, I'm training for the marathon." You're like, "Yeah? Are you serious? You're going to die in that marathon, my friend. You're going to die."
Obviously, my excuse is that I'm taking small steps.
You've been taking those small steps and you're still in your living room for 3-4 months. You haven't come out of your living room and you're still training for a marathon, sitting in your living room watching TV. That's not training, people. That's trying.
Mm.
So it's always, and one of the
Yeah.
things you'll always notice about a person who's in training is they're progressing. That's the one thing, that's the symbol of a person in training. They're not perfect, they're progressing. Okay? Trying is hoping to go from 0 to perfect in one stroke. Training is allowing the process to perfect you. Okay? Over a period of time, you will come better at things. So this is what we call mindset realignment. The first step to aligning your mindset is to stop using the word try. Stop using it.
Mm.
Like, it actually cut it out, because it's a word that has been put to allow you to exit if things go wrong and not take responsibility for bettering for going through a process. It's an impatience also. Also, when you quit, you can say, I tried. You tried. You have to
I
train.
did it.
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah.
Yes, you're training. And what training also accepts is not that the first attempts are not going to be good. And we are going to get better somewhere along the line until we get to that best point. And it's a process that's ongoing. And that's the point. And even when you if somebody, let's say, makes the Zambian football team, Stephanie, do they wake up in the morning and just say, okay, I've stopped training. Now that I've made it to the Zambian football team, I've stopped training. What do you think is going to happen to that guy? He stops training.
Yeah.
They'll be kicked
It's
out.
actually going to go down. Yeah.
Exactly. The Zambian women's team, tough weekend they had, but they're training. Right now, I can guarantee you after that game, they are in intense training right now. Okay? That was the first look. People can say what they want about that game. That's still the first Zambian team to walk onto a World Cup field. Our guys have got nothing to speak about it. They're still celebrating making it to AFCON. Okay, and AFCON they once won, and now this. Let me just leave the guys' team for today. But the point is, they are still training, constantly training. It becomes a part of your life. So I just wanted to recap all of that. So getting into our Mindset Monday, a recap of the book, as we've said, the power. I wanted to define the word power and desire. Okay, because when you make a New Year's resolution at the beginning of the year, and remember, people, we're more than halfway through the year. So whatever New Year's resolutions you had, if you've been in training, we should start to see the progress. If you are trying, then we haven't seen anything. You probably gave up in February. Whatever you try to do is your desires. The problem with New Year's resolutions is a lot of them are based on your desires. You tell yourself, oh, this year I'm getting into shape. No, this year you start training. It's not this year you're building more. This way you start training. Okay, so this is whenever you start something, engage in a process of training. So if you desire, you hope, you wish, you express, but the power to do something, okay, is the ability and capacity to affect or influence the outcome. So what you don't want, Stephanie, is the desire to do something, because desire is nothing. Power is the most important thing, okay? Power is the way you actually get to the outcome. And what is the defining point of power? It's discipline. So this is why we're in this point where we've talked about identity and not behavior, who before do. So we said you often identify yourself by what is your identity, what situation are you in, and what would a person in that situation do. We said that it is not behavior modification, but spiritual transformation that actually does it. So you have to change who you are inside in order for you to actually change who you are outside in a lasting fashion. Otherwise, it won't last. And you have to look at yourself, Stephanie, not by what you have done so far, but what your true potential is. Your identity is not your outcomes. Your identity is your potential. And if you start to look at yourself that way, then you start to try and push yourself to it. And the future you must always have a picture of who you want to be 10 years from now. This is why I keep saying New Year's resolutions are very dangerous. What you should have is milestones, is New Year's milestones. If your New Year's resolution is to get to a certain weight, okay, then give it a 5-year journey and break it down. Okay, so every year, how far should I get? What progress point? Give yourself 5-year projects in areas that truly matter to you. This is the year I'm going to get married is not a good thing to be saying, but give yourself a 5-year journey over this stuff. This is the year I'm going to get out of debt. Give yourself a 5-year journey. Okay, giving yourself a 5-year journey allows you to go through a process where year 1, you're going to bungle, but you're going to learn some lessons. Year 2, you're going to pick up the lessons from year 1 and start to improve. Year 3, you're going to pick up the lessons from year 1 and 2 and improve even better until year 5 comes along and you've reached your goal. And what you find is you probably even reached it a little bit earlier, because that's what I call the grace of God effect. Sometimes God throws you a bone whenever you're training. If you're trying, God will look at you and say, ow, this one. First step, they're going to quit. But if you're training, where you're learning lessons, you're stumbling and you're picking up, somewhere we see what we call our tailwinds that come behind you. Maybe if you're training to pay down your debt, what you often find is maybe an extra contract comes along. Maybe a gig, a huge gig that brings in a lot of money. So God already knows the mindset you have, and this extra big lump sum of money comes along. He knows that you're going to put it towards paying down your debt faster. But if you're trying, you're going to take that money to Chicago's, or you're going to take that money to a club or somewhere on the weekend. He knows you. You're going to take it to shopping, whatever it is. So the reality is, if you're in a training mindset, you are most likely capable of taking advantage of the windfalls in life. So this is why you have to have that long-term goal. There's what we call 3-stage transformation. This is what he talked about, where he said the problem with a lot of people is you want to change who you are on the outside. But he talked about by changing your direction. But he said in order to successfully change your direction, you have to change 3 steps. He said, and I'll give you, there was a sermon my brother preached where he asked a simple question. And I'll throw this at you, Stephanie. I know this sounds a lot like Sunday stuff, but the simple question is, why did the children of Israel have to go through 2 bodies of water to get to the promised land? They went through the Red Sea and they would have to eventually cross the Jordan. Why did the children of Israel have to go through 2 bodies of water to get to the promised land?
Was it to actually test their readiness?
It can be said so, but he actually made a point. He said, you have to understand that water washes things. He says there's a strong analogy in there that water washes things. He said the first body of water, the Red Sea, washed away the identity of slavery. Okay? So they had to stop identifying as slaves. The second body of water washed away the character of feeble slaves. So he says that by crossing the Red Sea, they faced salvation, which changed their identity. And by crossing the Jordan, they faced sanctification, which changed their character. And once you have changed your identity and then changed your character, you can then assume a direction. So a lot of us try to assume direction. Some people say, remember, I want to build wealth. I want to be a millionaire, everything. And then you're telling me you haven't changed your identity, so you don't do the things they do, and your character is horrible. So if you've got a poor identity and a poverty character, how do you think you're going to handle money? So when your salary increases at work, you're going to handle money in a very poverty-minded way. Your character is not going to allow you to make good money decisions. So the two stages you have to go through before you take an action is you must work on your identity and work on your character. And that's why he said there are two bodies of water they had to pass through. You have to get saved from your old identity. So you have to take it away. So whatever it is that held you back, everything you hate or you don't like about yourself right now is tied to a belief you have about yourself. There's something you believe about yourself. For example, a lot of people believe that wealthy people are evil who sacrifice people in the midnight. Okay. Well, if you believe that all wealth is done by sacrificing people in the midnight and it's evil, and you're a Christian, so what do you think? Creating wealth is going to do for you? You are going to have an inner resistance to it. Okay. There is a negative belief you have against wealth itself that you are going to always resist it. So you have to now start looking at your identity, because indirectly, Stephanie, what you've said is you've glorified poverty and you have identified with poverty. That's what you've done. You've identified with poverty. So because of that identity, you are always going to limit yourself, so that no matter how much money is given to you, somebody can give you 100,000, you will act in a poverty way. You will spend it recklessly. You will buy silly things, and you'll just hand it out like no one's business until you get down to it, because your brain has been limited to a specific amount of money. And it's almost like you're saying, this is not for me. It's not for me. I just need to hand it away as quickly as possible. So that is why people act the way they do with money. Even sports players, this is what happens. They don't go through a financial realignment. They get so much money so quickly that they still have a poverty mind. So they are only sustained by the money coming in. The moment the money is gone, you get Elijah Litana's interview where he was asked, what happened to your money? And his answer was, I ate the money. Okay? These are the realities that you start to get, because they're not realigned properly. So before you give someone a large lump sum of money, are they ready to receive it? This is why even when we pray to God for blessings, do people pray for the ability to receive that blessing, or do we just pray for the blessing? Because we've seen this with money a lot.
Yeah.
People pray for salary increases because the cost of things are going up, but do they pray for the wisdom to handle that money better? Or do they just pray for more money? And you see where the problem comes.
Yeah. Perhaps they assume that with more money comes wisdom.
I'm laughing because of how many times that's gone wrong. No, and it's true. People assume, it's the same thing people, by the way, we assume that with marriage. People assume that when I get married, I'm going to become no. That's how you get divorced. You become better before you do this stuff. You've got to train yourself for this. Even before the church allows you to get married, they take you through marriage counseling, because they know that you don't just walk in there and just wing it. You actually have to go through counseling. You have to go through training. There's exercises they give you to do because of that stuff. And even that stuff still doesn't work well, because nobody comes there ready for it. So assuming that, and people do this, they always assume, well, when I get paid more, I'm going to save more. That never works. It never. If you were not a saver at 5,000, 6,000 kwacha, if you're not able to save something, I can guarantee you that when you get 20, you're not going to save. You're not. The people who save, it's in them. They are already like that. So even when they have little, that's why the Bible says, he who is faithful with little shall be faithful with plenty. Biblical principles are very common in finance. They're very, very common in finance, because money is not a magic pill. It has to do with your character. Everything you do with money, Stephanie, speaks to your character as a human being. Okay. So that's why Sorry, I'm back now. Yes, so it speaks to your character as a human being, and that's why I was running into this. So before we talked about something, Stephanie, where we talked about the mindset of a person, and I wanted to just go back to this conversation about willpower. And there were 6 principles I gave out last week of things that a person should do to increase their willpower. The first one is select and commit to a philosophy. And the reason I say this is that you don't have enough willpower, Stephanie, to resist. Let me ask you a question about the Lord's Prayer. Does the Lord's Prayer say, and I'm going to give you 2 options, A, give us power to resist temptation, or B, lead us not into temptation?
Lead us not.
You know why? Because Jesus knows you don't have the power to resist temptation. That's what he knows. He knows you don't. No matter how much you are given, you are not. So the best thing to do is just to avoid it. Okay? So whatever the temptations are in your life to try and to do the wrong thing, try the point is not even try. Train. You see? Get that word out of your mind. Train yourself to avoid those temptations in the first place. There are guys who are like, they're married men, Stephanie, who say things like, I don't get into the car with a woman who's not unless my wife is there. Okay? I do not get into a car with a woman if my wife is not there. Why? Because that guy is smart enough to know that if he gets into vehicles and intimate situations with women long enough, he will slip up. Okay, he's smart enough to know. It's not because he's an uncontrollable monster. It's simply because he understands that at some point your willpower to resist temptation will be weak. And I talked about the fact that we are tested and our willpower is a diminishing pool. You do not have infinite willpower. It is a muscle that gets tired. And what happens, Stephanie, to a person who gets tired? They give up. Okay.
Yeah.
Eventually, if the devil pokes and prods at you enough, you give up. So if you're saying, I'm going to put my money in my bank account, and then afterwards, whatever's remaining, whatever's remaining, that's what I'll save and invest. I can guarantee you, Stephanie, if you approach saving and investing that way, you will have zero, because you are giving yourself the battle of resisting spending all your money every single time. So people who save after spending have got a tendency to have nothing to save. Why? Because because they're trying to resist spending their money. Because every time you have money in your hand, you have the impulse to spend it. You know that? Every time there's cash in your account or cash in your pocket, you actually have the impulse to spend it because your desires are, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. Have you noticed that every advert starts pitching up on your social media timeline the moment you have money in your account? Every special just pitches up on your phone. That is the devil at work now, constantly trying to get you to finish your money. So this is the best way to do that is to avoid it. So what do? You just throw the money into your savings immediately. Whatever is going to go into your savings, before you spend anything, apportion it. Why, Stephanie, did so many people run to their NAPSA? Because NAPSA was the only place they had money. Okay, that's the truth. NAPSA for many people was the only place they had money. Why? Because NAPSA is taken away before you even get your salary. So you notice that it's the things you commit to before you do anything else. Those are the things. This is why God tells you, give me your first fruit. It's a commitment to him before you do anything else. It's tithe, give to God. It's a commitment. So when you do something first, it's a commitment to that thing first. So commit to that thing. So what you have to do is wholeheartedly commit to your ideology, your plan, your principles. Commit to it. If you are able to commit to a principle without wavering, here's the most important thing. Every choice you make, Stephanie, every time you put yourself in a situation to make a choice, you are going to make yourself worse. I'm being honest with you. Every choice you give yourself, it's a 50-50 chance that you're going to get it right. Now, if you do enough math, you're going to learn this. The probability you're going to have good outcomes if you keep facing 50-50 situations is actually going to keep getting lower the more you do it. So the more you engage in these 50-50 choices, because it's 50-50, Stephanie, if you have 100 kwacha or 200 kwacha in your hand and you're going to put that in savings or you're going to spend it, it's 50-50. there's a 50-50 chance you'll spend it. It depends on what mood you're in that day. We don't know. Okay. But if you just take that 100 kwacha instantly straight to where it's supposed to go, before you've even touched it, used it, anything, it is definitely going to get saved and invested. So committing to an ideology is allowing yourself to put in place a system that protects you from that. So that is why I said, assuming a training mindset, it removes choice. One of the smartest things you can do for your life is only make the choice to commit to an ideology. Once you've committed, you've got to make sure it's not even a choice anymore. Okay? You've got to remove any optionality that you have, and you've just got to commit to it wholeheartedly. Because the longer you can stay in something, the better your outcomes tend to become. And I know people don't like that because they like to think, oh, I should have a choice. I'd like to leave, because people are flaky. Okay, we don't like committing to things. We don't like being held responsible. We don't like responsibility. We don't like accountability. We don't like being held accountable. Why? And it's the same conversation, by the way, I've had with people, and I've said, join your bank accounts. I say this because I've been through the experience of having separate bank accounts. It doesn't work. Many people, even when you sit down and you counsel, it doesn't work. Sometimes it will, but it just doesn't. Okay? The reality is, a lot of people who have managed this process pool their money into a singular account. Yes, they may have separate ones where they put in some money on the side, but generally they tend to pool their funds. And the data will support it. It's just unfortunate that we don't like accountability. It's something we really don't like. We don't like somebody holding us to something that we've promised ourselves to do. So I'm going to just play a clip from Dave Ramsey where he asked the question, why do certain professions end up becoming millionaires more? I'll answer it and then we'll close up there. But it's simple. The question is, why do certain professions, and they ask the question in America. In Zambia, by the way, I have a lot of clients who are teachers and nurses, by the way. I have a lot of people who are what we call process-oriented. And he's talking about the singular mindset that's the most important to building wealth. So this is Dave Ramsey talking on the Ramsey Show about why teachers, but he's going to talk about the singular important mindset.
Group of people that become millionaires. Why are teachers consistently in the group of people that become millionaires? I'm going to add to this question. He's referring to the Ramsey Solutions study, the largest group of millionaires ever done, over 10,000, and they were in the top 5 school teachers of net worth millionaires. That's what he's referring to.
The top 5 career fields of the millionaires in the largest study of millionaires ever done in North America. Number 1 was engineer. Number 2 was accountant. Number 3 was teacher. Number 4 was business professional. And number 5 was lawyer. Why do these 5 land there? And what does an engineer, an accountant, a lawyer, a business professional, teacher have in common? And I think you hit it on the head when you said method. They are systems people. They work with a set of principles, and they don't have free rein to make up their own rules. When you're a lawyer and you go before the judge, you have to follow exact procedures. You don't have a choice when you're an engineer designing a bridge. There's basically one way, otherwise it falls. Yep. Accountants don't say, well, this is creative. They call that embezzlement. Accounting is a set of generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, the process of doing accounting. There's one process, and you submit yourself to proven principles and methods to be successful in any of those careers, and money works exactly the same way. Right. You have to submit yourself to a set of proven principles. You live on less than you make. You're generous. You invest. You have a written plan. You're in agreement with your spouse. These are set principles that you don't get to be creative. Well, I don't think it works. Yeah, I don't agree. Who gives a crap if you agree? This is the way the bridge is built. Yeah. This is the way that you do a lesson plan if you're a teacher. Right. This is the proper methodology for instructing. It is so structured. Yeah. And so they're used to functioning in a structured environment and submitting themselves to proven structured processes, which money and wealth building are. Right.
So I just wanted to put that out there, that he's putting a very simple principle out there, Stephanie, that the people who, and I'll tell you, even from my perspective, not even my perspective, from my experience, even if I go through my client book, okay, I do consultations, I go through these clients, I go through their workbooks, and I'll tell you for a fact, engineers are very good at building wealth. Engineers are very good at this. Okay, my top clients often are accountants and engineers. Why is this? Because these are very process-oriented people. Okay, they whenever they come to me, they want a plan and they stick to it. That's the one thing I'll tell you. Whether it's a civil engineer, electrical engineer, whether it's a computer engineer, whatever it is, they stick to it. Okay. Even teachers, when you give them a plan, they stick to it. So they've been groomed by their profession to follow a plan. People who follow tend to see things through better. People who like choosing too much tend to give up on things a lot. Okay? And they tend not to follow instructions. At the beginning of your wealth journey, you have to follow instructions. And this is why the next Mindset Monday, I'm actually going to talk about the journey to becoming better at something, is you have to go through 4 stages of following things and what those things are. But I just wanted to rebuild to where we are, Stephanie, that it's not that engineers and these professions are somehow more superior. There's a mindset ingrained in these people to follow instructions and follow things through. And money is a set of instructions. If you don't follow it, you will end up burning it. And no matter how smart you think you are, you need to follow a set of proven principles when it comes to something. And if you're not good at following, that's where you're going to start dropping off. And I'll say it again, that's why engineers and accountants generally make up a lot of my client base. They make up a very good portion of my client base. And even, I'll tell you, teachers and nurses are also there too. Very good at following instructions. The ones who say, I feel, I don't feel. The ones who like writing feel. When they respond to me, they don't see stuff through at all. I'll tell you that for a fact, they don't. So that's a mindset I wanted to give out today. And that's where I want to leave it for today. So we're going to talk about the 4 stages of improvement in the next Mindset Monday, next Monday. And tomorrow we'll be going through finding your talent, the thing that actually makes you a lot of money. That's going to be in our topic of discussion tomorrow.
Thank you, Munyumba, for actually making it a very, very educative show today. Until tomorrow again, it's bye.
And thank you, Stephanie, for lighting it up today. Until tomorrow, it's bye. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.